So I'm going to be blatantly honest with you,
Mm,
and this could upset many people, but this is the truth because I am
yeah.
talking to countless of friends and some relatives in Syria, wherever is left, and nobody has the power and the mental capacity, let's say, to hold up arms and continue fighting. And they've been fighting for
Mhm,
14 years. Unfortunately speaking, after Assad fled the country, many Syrian people felt completely subjugated,
mhm,
and their moral, let's say, is completely destroyed. And they are basically calling for anyone to come and help at the current moment. And we have to also put it in the proper context. Any resistance will need at some point certain support. The popular support is very important, is detrimental if the people decide to fight. But
mm,
if you don't have an industrial base, if you don't have the weapons, you're not manufacturing weapons, you will need somebody supplying you weapons. One of the uh, best armed non state actors in the world is Hezbollah. And Hezbollah, up until this moment, it relies on supply chains, whether it is spare parts or direct weapons. So
mm,
even the missiles or rockets that Hezbollah manufactures, some of the technologies and knowledge comes from or used to come from Syria, Iran, and other places. Therefore, in the coastal cities, if there is no regional or international support for the people, then we are asking them to go to meat grinder. So I'm not in favor of people fighting back now without solid support because we're sending them
yeah.
to their imminent death. And that
They
is
can't
why,
they can't physically fight back right now.
no, they cannot. That is why because who are the players
Yeah.
that can be interested in supporting them? So I will mention Hezbollah. Hezbollah is probably interested. However, they are still recovering from a bloody war with Israel, number one.
Mhm,
And secondly, the sectarian sensitivity in the region is at its
yeah.
peak, unprecedented. So even if a Hezbollah, let's say the most junior official in Hezbollah says, "Oh, we sympathize with the people in Syria," they will interpret it in a different way, and the same goes with
Mhm,
Iran. So the other player is Russia, which is uninterested in arming them. So the only formula left are two. It's either Syria going to become federalized, there is a central government, a weak one in Damascus, and the rest are managing their own affairs, or
mm,
they are headed to a complete Balkanization of Syria, which means in the coastal part, the Alawites and the Christians in the Christian Valley, they could form their own mini state. The same goes with the Druze and the Kurds. And this is what Israel wanted to achieve in Syria for a long time. For 20, 30 years,
mhm, mhm,
they've been working and planning. And I want to go one step further and say they emerged successful in Syria. They have won this regime change war. There are two players who won the Syrian war, Turkey and Israel. And both of them are
mhm,
using the chaos now for different end games. And that
mhm.
is why I also speculate that there could be different clashes of interest between Turkey and Israel over the Syrian territories. And this is again another formula for endless wars in the country.
You mentioned, the significant number of Syrians that are justifying the killings, and a reason that they're justifying it is saying, this is payback for what went down during, Assad's time. Why do you think that this is the case? Aren't these their own people?
So the sad reality is there is no Syrian people.
Mm,
And I came to this realization. I always saw differences between Syrian people and we considered it difference because it's a mosaic, different people, but it turned out there is no Syrian people. There are different sub-identities and people nowadays see themselves or identify themselves according to these sub-identities. And
mm,
for a long time, the the Americans, when they occupied Iraq, they have humiliated the Sunnis. And the same goes in different places around the world. So Erdogan, during this time, he presented himself as the savior of the Sunnis, somebody who is going to uplift the Muslim Sunnis from their misery. So he capitalized on these American wage wars in order to gain credibility and influence in the region.
Mhm.
But this also caused lots of tensions in multicultural or ethnic countries because there was always this the perception that one group can dominate on the rest. Like the culture of democratic coexistence doesn't exist in the region. Whoever comes in power, they want to subjugate the rest, which means the our Arabic countries aren't ready for this type of governance. And this is something that I have been brainstorming a lot. And I thought, like, in European countries or in Western countries, these Westphalian type of states, they are a product of hundreds of years of their own civilizational or cultural development, whether for
Mhm.
positive or for negative. But in our region, for the first time, what is Syria? What is Lebanon? What is Iraq? It's been only decided by the Sykes and Picot again 110 years ago, and they told us those are your borders. Now you have your nation states, but we will govern you for the rest 30 to 40 years. And then in 45 to 48, then they given the people this so-called independence after 450 years of occupation between the Ottoman Empire and the French and the Brits. So people have woken up the second day finding themselves in a nation state without national identity, basically. And during this time, two competing approaches rose. One is Pan Arabism, and the second one is the Muslim Brotherhood.
Mm.
And this has ended now in 2024 in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood because the Islamic identity is very essential, let's say, in the hearts and the minds of all Muslims, and
Mhm.
rightfully so. But when you politicize that identity through regional powers such as Turkey and Qatar and you funnel money, then you use the religion in order to establish an empire, in order to establish a dominance over the region. And this is what Turkey did, and this is what Qatar did, and this is what Saudi Arabia did. And this has ended up in a big, big tragedy for the Syrian people, regardless of ethnic or religious background. Sooner or
Mm.
later, as I mentioned also on X, Syrians will notice and will realize, albeit too late, that they didn't only take down a regime, they took down their nation because this was a fresh idea to have a nation state. We were always part of either an Ottoman Empire or part of a colonial power, but this attempt to unify the people under an umbrella of Pan Arabism has failed miserably. And this is why the countries will either, this region will either join the Qatari or Turkish or Saudi camp, or the minorities will choose other foreign powers. And that's why you see the Druze or the Kurds, they say, we don't have a problem with Israel. We're being getting killed by these Takfiris. So,
Mhm.
but I know this is a wrong, let's say, understanding because Israel participated in creating these conditions against these minorities and now is presenting itself as a savior. But I'm asking for the people to understand, like, if there is a gunman outside your home, he is from Chechnya, Uzbekistan, and they are completely psychopaths. They have no feelings at all. They, like I myself, if I hold a cat in my hand, we have a heart. We want to protect this cat.
Mhm.
We have this instinct, right? These people
Mhm.
have heartless completely. They're killing women and children and men, complete innocent people, and not only for killing, out of joy. They're enjoying the killing. So this gives us the perception which what type of people we are dealing with. And that is why the other day I was in a demonstration here in front of the Turkish embassy. I was shocked. I was shocked. In the past 10, 14 years, myself, I received lots of backlash from Syrian people because they were like, why are you standing with the Syrian regime and this and that? But
Mm.
th- that is why I was on the side of the Assad regime or the Syrian army because I knew this is what is going to happen if this regime collapses. Now they
Mm.
understand it, but again, in the wrong way. They're coming and telling me, even if Israel intervenes, we don't have a problem. We want just to save our family and our friends or whoever relatives left in Syria. And this proves the
But how
point that is
why
this.
do they see this as why do they see Israel as a savior at this point, after the massacres in Gaza? And again now, like the ceasefire on Gaza is completely demolished now, we were seeing we're going back all the way to October of last year. It's so heavy. And how do they not see this?
I'm very happy you asked this question, and I myself covered the horrendous massacres happened in Gaza.
Mhm.
And what we saw in Gaza is it was unprecedented. Like, what
Yeah.
does it mean killing 700 people in one day, right? Like,
It's a number
I
too big for people to even
yes,
comprehend or imagine.
if 700 people die in one day in the United States, they will invade any country just out of desperation, right? 700
Mhm.
people is those are 700 families, 700 souls, and this is horrendous. Um, but people forget when there is a new misery. So what happens is
Mhm.
we live in a region. You remember Sabra and Shatila. You remember every massacre which happened in the region. But a new one comes at a later stage. So your
Mhm.
entire emotions now are focused on the new one, and this is
And then
what is
everything
happening.
else just becomes history.
Exactly. They are basically confusing the people emotionally. They're hitting them from one wall to another. And I
Yeah.
will be also. I'm very happy you asked this question because I am intending to be very honest with you.
Mhm.
This what we call the Ikhwanization of the region by
Yeah.
Qatar and by Turkey also reached to Palestine. So you have also people living in Gaza, basically, with big platforms and celebrating the massacres against the Alawites in the coastal cities. And therefore, the people are completely losing their minds, saying,
Mhm.
we who stood with Palestine, the Palestinian people, and we paid the price for it because why do you think they came
Yeah.
after the regime in Syria?
Yeah.
Because it was a dictatorial. I mean, all the countries in the region are dictatorial, but why Syria? Because Syria has given tangible support to the groups, the Palestinian and the Lebanese groups, to resist. So that is why they came after them, right? However, when you see, I'm talking about now very influential people in Gaza. Some of them work with Al Jazeera, for example,
Mhm.
and they support Al Nusra, they support Abu Muhammad al-Julani. People will lose sympathy against them, for them, sorry,
Mhm.
for the Palestinians, right? And this
Yeah.
is something that is we have to address as quick as possible because Israel is now establishing itself as a dominant power in the region. And with what happened in Syria, they consider it a strategic victory. And
Mm.
the coming back to the bombing of Gaza has one reason. So Gaza and Yemen and Syria are interconnected with each other. Now, Syria is the most vulnerable state in the region. Trump is no longer pretending like his predecessors. He's just simply saying what the United States wanted to do for decades, and that is ethnic
Yeah.
cleansing of the Palestinians. They're just talking about it publicly every day, but where are they going to send them? Egypt, it's not going to work. And Jordan is not going to work. Jordan has the biggest borders with Israel. Imagine sending hundreds of thousands of angry Palestinians there and then probably threatening Israel from there, right? So it won't
Mhm.
work in Jordan. But Syria, where you have a self-appointed president who is begging for legitimacy from the US, he
Mm.
could agree to receive these hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, but not to settle them anywhere in Damascus or in Daraa or in Sweda. No. If he receives them, he will send them to Raqqa, he will send them to Deir ez-Zor, anywhere far away from the Israeli borders. So in this case, I see that the continuation of the bombardment of Gaza is to tell the Palestinian people, you have lived 14 months of the the most inhumane conditions you could ever imagine. And this is coming back if you don't surrender and leave. And I'm reading for people in Gaza on X, like, we are not ready for another year of this same. Like, we just had our ceasefire. We don't want this again. So what they're doing is they're creating a psychological condition in Gaza to
Yeah.
force the people to say, "Khalas, we no longer want this. Take us wherever it is possible. We cannot handle this any longer."
Yeah.
How do you explain cutting the food, cutting the water, cutting the electricity? This is the reason why they're doing it. And at the same time, the Americans are talking to Jolani's government, telling him Somalia, Sudan are also on the table, but also Syria. And I would not rule out that Abu Muhammad Jolani would accept such a deal in exchange for political legitimacy long term, let's say, from the US.